Watching the Vikings come back for that win against the Chargers, and after the game, Mike talked about how he wants his quarterback to take more shots like that. What was your guys' impression of how that game played out?
Well, it's not only that game; it's every game. They've been ahead in every game this year, and I think every game's come down to one possession. So we know that this is a very, very talented team. There's a lot of weapons offensively, defensively. They're doing a great job getting after the quarterbacks. I think Mike Zimmer, I think he's one of the best in the game. I know on special teams, they've got a couple blocks, so it's going to be a good test for us on the road in that environment. It's a tough place to play.
That Aaron is, for years, even when Zimmer was in Cincinnati, talked about what a challenge it is to play against his defense. What do they do so well historically and typically?
Well, they present a lot of different challenging looks for you. Everything kind of plays off one another. I think when you look at what Harrison Smith brought to that defense, just his ability to disguise. I mean, shoot, there's sometimes he's on the line of scrimmage and then he's going to play a middle third on the snap of the ball. So I think those guys, a lot of their players have been playing together for a while now. Kendrick Barr, so they just they communicate well together. They play off each other well, and it's a really good sound scheme. They do a great job of keeping the ball in front of them. It's hard to get explosive plays. So I think it's one of the best systems out there.
What's the determining factor you find in division games when you both know each other so well year after year playing twice?
Yeah, I think that you can always expect some wrinkle. I think that just is pretty standard for most division games.
Matt, is it the week for David, or are you going to take the week? What's your kind of plan?
I sure hope so, but again, it's going to be a day-by-day process, and we'll see where he's at.
So does anything factor in terms of being on the road or anything like that, or is it just he's deemed ready, he's ready? Because I would think that to some degree it's a little more comfortable to come back at home, and obviously you're not.
Yeah, I don't think the road necessarily has anything to do with that. It's just going to be where he is physically, and have we gotten him ready to play?
Now, with where things are in the division, how do you look at the opportunity your team has right now, and what do you think the mentality of the Vikings is in terms of their opportunity in this game?
Yeah, I think both teams look at it the same way. It's a great opportunity for both teams, and I know they're sitting there chomping at the bit, and they're going to be fired up, and I'm sure we're going to get their best shot, just like they're going to get our best shot.
You've been able to deploy two backs pretty much all season with Aaron and AJ. With just having AJ, how much do you have to change your offense when it's more of a one-back look than having both of those guys?
It's just every game's different in terms of our game plan, how we want to go into it. You will see Patrick Taylor is got to be ready to go, and then we'll see where we're at the end of the week in terms of how we use them and the rotation that we use.
If AJ's usage is higher than it has been, does it help that the bye week is in 3 weeks and you just have these two games? Do you look at it like that at all?
Not so much. I again, so focused on what's in front of us, playing our best ball. It's going to be a great challenge. This is one of the tougher teams, I think, that will have played, no doubt about it. They got playmakers really in every phase.
What traits stand out with Kirk Cousins compared to other quarterbacks in the league?
Well, I've known Kirk a long time, been with him in Washington when he was a rookie and in his second year, and I've always had he's just such a natural thrower. He is a student of the game. I think there's not anything he can't do out there. So I've always had a lot of respect for him and feel like he's probably one of the more underrated guys. I think he is having a hell of a year.
Matt, Justin Jefferson is having such a great sophomore year. I mean, he's averaging 14.1 yards per catch. What do you see when you see an explosive player like that?
Yeah, again, a guy that there's nothing that he cannot do. He is he's dynamic with the ball in his hands, or he's down the field in the short to intermediate game. He can break people off. He plays extremely fast. He's got a great body lean, great hands. I just think he's a great competitor.
Compared to your birthday week, do you feel like, compared to your birthday week, do you feel like kind of things are calmed down, controversy, drama? Do you feel a little bit more relaxed, I guess, this week kind of thing?
I feel like it's been like that the whole time for us. I mean, it's just new challenges on a weekly basis, but that's life in the National Football League. As far as all the noise outside of here, I try not to pay too much attention to it.
Speaking of Jefferson, did you do a lot of work on him before the draft yourself? And did you think that he was a potential real good fit for you guys at the time?
Yeah, I mean, I loved him coming out. He was just a dynamic playmaker, and he's proven that in this league. He's playing at a really high level, and then you combine that with Thielen. That's quite a duo right there, and our defense is going to have their hands full with both those guys.
Every week you come in here talking about going 1-0 or reset button or whatever the phrase is. I'm sure every coach has some sort of form of that. Why does it work so well for you and your guys? Why have you guys had, you look at last week's games, 4 really good teams were beaten by lesser teams. You guys have generally avoided that.
I don't know. I think that's a credit to the locker room. Those guys taking that to heart and focusing on the task at hand. We know how challenging every game is. I mean, most of these games come down to a couple plays here and there, and so you can never take it for granted in this league. You got to bring your best each and every week.
You were talking to Albert Breer after the game for that piece for SI. You listed a whole bunch of your team's leaders. Is that part of it where it's not just you drumming this message in your head? You can lean on 10 or 12 other guys who can kind of relay that in their own way?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a lot of veterans that have been in this league a long time, that understand what it takes, that have competed at the highest of levels, that have won a lot of games, and that definitely makes it a lot easier when you're talking to the team and they're saying the same things.
Hey Matt, in what ways have you seen Stokes kind of grow throughout the course of this season, with the 7 starts he's had now and as much as he's played?
Yeah, I love how he competes every day. He brings it in practice. He's always got a smile on his face. He embraces the opportunity, embraces the challenge. And I think you see that on game day as well. It translates. And he's a guy that I just think he's getting better and better. And we're gonna have to get his best this week because, again, those 2 wideouts are as good as it gets.
At tight end, Josiah DeVora, he's coming back from that injury from last year, and now he's kind of in the spotlight. So how has his progress been this season, and what did you guys see in Tyler Davis to add to your team?
Yeah, I think, Josiah is a guy that we were really excited about, and he had a nice role early last year. Then he gets hurt pretty early on, and it takes a minute for these guys to come back and recover and rebound from that. But I think he's feeling more comfortable now. I think he looks more to how he was a year ago, and just excited that he's coming back and playing a big role for us, and we need that, especially when we lost Bobby. And Josiah is so versatile, and that's what we really like about him. As far as Tyler's concerned, he's a guy that is getting more acclimated with our system, and hopefully we can keep plugging him in there more and more.
And Matt, going back to the defense, I know the standard is the standard and the next man up, but if somebody had told you you'd be without Z almost all year and without Jair almost all year and you're still where you are defensively, what do you think that says about your defense as a whole and Joe and the whole group? Because those are your 2 biggest studs, I would think, on that side of the ball.
Yeah, but I also think it speaks to the other players that we have and the depth that we have, but it takes everybody, especially, in the game of football. We talk about it all the time, all 11 being on the same page, just owning your responsibility, doing the little things the right way, focusing in on the details. I think, Joe's done a great job of bringing that type of culture and, allowing the assistant coaches to coach the heck out of their guys and be a part of the process. And I'm just really happy with the progress our defense has made. And again, it's going to be a good challenge to see where we're at this week.
When you envisioned your defense in the offseason, you obviously wouldn't have drawn it up not having Z and Jair as long as you have. Did you sense, though, that you had this kind of depth in the offseason? Did you have that sense coming in?
I think that's always kind of tough to gauge until everybody feels pretty good in the offseason, usually. So I knew, you could tell we had a lot of good players, but you just always kind of wonder how it's all going to come together, how the team, how the guys, formed that cohesive unit. And so, yeah, I'm very pleased with where we're at, but we also know there's a lot of ball out in front of us. A lot of things can happen, and you just can't take it for granted.
Last week you faced a Seattle team desperate based on their place in the standings. This week, Minnesota, if they want to catch you, they really need this one. When you face teams, obviously when you have two great opponents like Arizona, that has one feeling. When you face a team that's out of it late in the season, that has a feeling. But can you sense it when you're facing a desperate team based on how it feels in the game and the energy you see on the field? And what does that look like from your position?
I feel like every week, everybody seems desperate to me, including us. I mean, you're always these wins are so tough to come by, and you need every one of these just to help put yourself in the best position possible for the end of the season.
It appears your safeties are playing at a pretty high level. What does that allow you to do defensively?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I think there's multiple people in the back end that are playing at a really high level, but Adrian and Darnell are doing a great job just not allowing the big plays to happen and then coming away with our own big plays in itself. I mean, shoot, Adrian had the pick. That was a great pick last week, and he had a couple others that he had opportunities at. But both those guys I think they've really grown well together over the last couple of years, and just lucky to have two guys of that caliber, not only as players, but as people. They're so intelligent. They communicate well. They're great leaders in the room.
Given the limitations on practice, how have you tackled so well?
That's always a question around here, right? I remember year one, you guys were grilling me on that all the time.
I was going to mention it because it's, at least according to one Sport Radar, they track a bunch of stuff. You guys have the third fewest missed tackles. You have 10 games compared to 9 for some of those other ones. So
I'm glad you know all the stats, because I sure as hell don't. Yeah, no, I think, there's a lot of layers, I think, to that question. Number one is, it helps to have really good players, but also the emphasis that's placed upon that, and you got to drill it. And I don't know many teams in this league that are doing live tackling in practice. It just, I don't think it's realistic. And you never want to put your guys at more risk than they already are, because we know in order for us to be our best, we need our guys available. And so, it's something we'll continue to emphasize, but again, you got to keep working, and you can't think that you've arrived ever.
You didn't put Rashawn Gary on IR. Does that mean that there's a chance that he could be back fairly certain? And is there some kind of big old brace they could put on his arm that might allow him to play fairly soon?
Yeah, we'll see where he's at. Again, we'll take it on a daily basis and see where he's at. But certainly, we hope to get him back sooner than later. And if it's going out there with a brace, whatever it may be. But I do think Rashawn and I were actually talking about how fortunate it wasn't a major injury.
Let's go to Zoom. Sarah, go ahead.
Monday, you had referenced, someone asked you about running out of a shotgun, and you mentioned it was, somewhat specific to the game plan. And there have been a few times this season when you've mentioned whether it's running a few more power looks, what have you. I obviously don't expect you to go into specifics, but is that usually driven by the opponent's personnel, or is it mainly driven by their scheme?
I think that it's both that kind of influence us, and certainly I think just looking back to last week, we knew we were going to have a lot of run alerts. I want to say we threw at least 6 of them or so last weekend, and it's definitely at times easier to do that from the gun, so that was a big reason for that. But personnel can definitely play a factor in that, as well as the scheme.